When Doctor Who returned to our screens in 2005 after a 15-year hiatus, Character Options were quick to acquire the license and start producing action figures. This line of 5-inch figures was incredibly successful, producing hundreds of figures and even expanding the range to include the classic series as well. There were multiple lines and scales of Doctor Who figures, and they even produced playsets and vehicles as well. But today, I'm going to be taking a look through what I think are the very best that the new series Doctor Who figures had to offer. And I'm going to be doing a countdown of my top 10 new series Doctor Who figures. In at number 10, we have the Series 3 finale, Master. This character was hugely significant as the big villain at the end of Series 3, but he would go on to reappear in the show at least another 2 times. But I think this is the look that the John Sim Master is most remembered for, in his Prime Minister suit with his laser screwdriver. As a figure, Character Options have done really well. In theory, this could have been a difficult sell. Essentially, it is just a guy in a suit. There's no swappable heads, there's no alien arms. It could have been quite dull, but actually, it works. And there's enough articulation and detailing to make this figure interesting. He does of course come with his laser screwdriver, which is well painted and perfectly sculpted. And the likeness is really solid. I'm always amazed at how Character Options are able to reproduce such great likenesses in such a small scale. And there's little details on the shoes or the rings on his fingers that allow the figure to have a little bit more flair, a bit more character, which I think is great. The articulation works really well with this figure, and you're able to accurately recreate some of the poses he strikes in the series finale to get a sense of the Master. I definitely think it seeps off this figure, and I think they've done a fantastic job of bringing him to life. Okay, number 9 might be slightly controversial. It is the new Dalek paradigm. They did a collection of these figures. They did about 5 in which there were different colours. There was red, there was white, there was blue, there was orange, yellow. And now I understand that this Dalek wasn't well received on screen and that people had many issues with the design. However, I'm looking at it purely as a toy aesthetic, and I think as a toy, this figure really works. I love how bright and colourful these Daleks are. I love having the pure primary colours there, really effective. I think the sheer size and build of the Dalek is super impressive, and I love that they've gone to the effort to introduce little details. So for example, we can see the mutant eye there, looks really good, and the clear ears. I think looks fantastic, and I think this is a really nice toyetic figure. It does of course have the wheels on the bottom as with the other Daleks, so it can move about, which I think is a nice touch. But overall, I just think it's the sheer size of this Dalek that's really impressive. When you stand him up against the 11th Doctor there, you can see just how big he is. He towers above Matt Smith's Doctor there, and it looks really effective. And I just think you have to give kudos to them for making a figure that is, you know, it's a very different Dalek, and it's great to have that diversity in the collection. Number 8 may be another controversial one. This is the Slovene. Now, I have to say, again, this is based purely on as a toy aesthetic. I personally cannot stand the Slovene on screen. I cannot stomach them. I think they're a fairly hateful monster. But we're looking at the toy, and I do think the toy is fantastic. You have to give them top marks for creativity. We're looking at something that is completely new here, a brand new mould that is completely unique to this character. This isn't something we're going to see replicated in other figures over and over and over again. This is purely for the Slovene, and it looks fantastic. I think it's really good. As a figure, it's bright, it's colourful, it's definitely monstrous, and the articulation is really solid. Its head swivels all the way around. It has, for the first time, that ball jointed shoulder, so it can actually raise its arms all the way up and out backwards. That is something we don't see enough of in this line, and it's absolutely fantastic to see it here. And then just look at the breadth when both arms are stretched out. Look how wide that grasp is. I just think it looks fantastic, and I think it's just really fun to have this in your collection. He's much more menacing as a toy than in the show. He has those ball-jointed hips, and this works really well in this figure. Although you can see it in other figures in the line, this is where it really has its maximum impact, and I think it looks absolutely brilliant. And again, just looking at the sculpt, I just think it's fantastic. The amount of detailing, and you can see different paint washes on this as well, so you can see the black mixed in with the grey there to give it that extra shading, and it looks brilliant. It looks quite realistic. and the expression on the face is pretty monstrous, and I have to say, disturbingly, this actually reminds me of a colleague I used to work with. Suffice it to say, pretty scary. Number 7 is Captain Jack Harkness. This is his appearance in Season 3 or Season 4, once the character had been more fully developed and of course had that long trench coat. This is a great figure and there's no two ways about it. The overall appearance of the figure is fantastically well produced. This again looks entirely screen accurate and it really seems to capture the likeness of the character and the energy of the character. Smartly, they've decided to go for a soft plastic for the coat, and it works really well. I think the colour application given him the blue vest really shines, and the likeness is pretty good. Now, it's not perfect, there's something slightly off about the eyes, I think, but overall, this is a massive step up from the release we had previously, which I really loathe this first season Jack figure. It's horrible from head to toe, but here, this is, definitely... character options have redeemed themselves because this is a fantastic looking figure. And as I said, I think it was such a wise decision for them to go with the soft plastic for the coat, so you can pull it apart at the lapels there and you can actually see his gun holster, again nicely coloured there, bright brown, so it makes the figure really pop, and of course you can see his braces as well, which again, absolutely integral for the character, and I think they've just done a wonderful job of applying the paint apps and it just looks great. Now, he does come with his signature pistol as well. The only thing I would say is I'm slightly critical of the figure for this, because you will see there that his hand is moulded so that he has a trigger finger, and you would think that the gun would fit nicely in. Sadly, it doesn't. That finger cannot go through that hole, so he doesn't actually hold it correctly. As you can see here, there's a huge gap there, and it just looks a bit unsightly, and it doesn't quite fit his hand for some reason, so I'm not sure what happened, but the gun just seems a little bit too small. But when you put him together with the 10th Doctor and have the TARDIS on display there like that, I think this looks absolutely phenomenal, and you really get a flavour of their adventures on screen. I love this, I think it looks absolutely brilliant. At number 6 we have the 10th Doctor in his tuxedo. Now, over the years, Character Options produced hundreds, or it seems like hundreds, of variants of the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor. This is understandable, they are the stars of the show, and of course, they were both immensely popular. But despite this, I always had issues with the David Tennant figures. I never liked just the suit version, and I thought the coat version was much nicer, but I never really liked the under jacket underneath. It seemed to be a little bit too long for the character. Until, of course, they released this version. I think this might be my favourite of the David Tennant Character Options figures all round. He wore this suit a handful of times in this series, and Character Options have done a fantastic job of bringing it to life here. It is of course just a simple tuxedo, but they've done a great job. The head sculpt is brilliant and the articulation is vastly improved. Another huge feather in this figure's cap is of course the shoulder articulation. I love this in the Character Options range. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It just creates that ball jointed shoulder there. It just allows so much more flexibility and posability, and it allows for greater range of dynamic posing and just really brings the character to life. And the 10th Doctor of all the Doctors is probably the most animated. All in all, this is a pretty fantastic figure, and for me, best represents David Tennant's 10th Doctor in action figure form. At number 5 we have the Supreme Dalek. Now, I did make myself a promise that I wasn't just going to fill this list with Daleks, and it was a toss-up between this and the Mutant Reveal Dalek, but in the end, this one won out for me. The Mutant Reveal Dalek is very nice, but its proportions are slightly off, and this is such a beautiful design. I love the colours on this. I love that it's bright red, the gold. I think it looks really effective, but I also love that it has the third ear on there and the extra support arms. Look absolutely fantastic. The proportions on this Dalek are absolutely perfect, and as I say, the paint apps are absolutely wonderful. Of course, it has the standard articulation. It can spin its dome and its plunger, but it also has those wheels there to allow it to move about. And they also did an electronic version of this as well, with sound effects and light up ears. And once again, he is taller than your average Dalek. Here you can see him next to the 10th Doctor, and you can see he towers above him. And they look fantastic together, and instantly you have a fantastic display piece when you put these together. At number number 4 I have the Silence. And in this I'm including both the standard release and the variant as well. Now these guys have made only a very brief appearance in the show's history, but their first appearance was really very creepy, and they were fantastic new additions to the monster roster. I'm really pleased to say that they have translated so well to action figure form. They have extra long bodies, so they're extra tall. They have, obviously this is a brand new exclusive unique mold to these figures. These aren't something that can be reused any other time, but they are so faithfully recreated and so screen accurate. It's very, very impressive. I love the mold they've used and the attention to detail. If we look at the difference of the two variants here, we can see that obviously we have the colour difference. So we can see that one is a much darker grey, one is a more flesh toned, and of course one is open mouthed whilst one is closed mouthed, and I think they're both deeply creepy looking. And if you notice, the applications for the eyes are actually very expertly painted there. There's a level of depth to them that actually, yeah, it's quite a penetrating stare, and they've done a fantastic job. Character options have been able to nail the creepiness in the mould, and have just really brought these characters to life. But these figures are also a real winner when it comes to articulation. I mean, once again, we're seeing that shoulder joint there, which is fantastic. And I think this was kind of new at the time. And it was wonderful to see it on these. And I just think, yeah, overall, we've got a really strong visual figure here with great articulation. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And, of course, here he is standing next to the 11th Doctor. And again, you can get that sense of scale, just how he towers over him. And just how creepy that looks. And, yeah, I think they've just done a really amazing job, and these are definitely amongst my absolute favourites. At number 3 we have the Time of the Doctor 11th Doctor figure. This is of course based on his outfit as he appears in that final episode, but also his outfit for the majority of season 7 as well. This is visually a lot more appealing, it's a lot more colourful, and it's just a very nice, pleasant design. And I think Character Options have done a great job of bringing this to life. But also, this is actually a slightly different head sculpt to the usual 11th Doctor that we've seen. The hair, if you notice, is very slightly different. And the costume, of course, has a lot more attention to detail in it. When we look at the bow tie, it's got the spots there, it's got the waistcoat, which is really nice. And of course, he does have the fantastic articulation. Again, we're seeing that ball jointed shoulder, and it just creates so many more opportunities for posability that fans like me really appreciate. The frock coat is a soft plastic, so you can pull it apart, and indeed you're encouraged to because you can swap out the waistcoat. But again, I love the attention to detail. The buttons, the watch, I think just look really, really nice and well painted. Likewise, they've also gone to the same trouble of actually giving him variant boots. Actually, they've changed the paint apps there, and it looks really good. But he also comes with a whole host of extras as well. So he has the rusty Cyberman head, which is a fab mould, and just look how wonderfully painted it is as well. But he also has the old man head as well, with the glasses complete, which is a really good look. And of course, his walking stick. But that's not all, because this figure also comes with the first Peter Capaldi head. So this also doubles as a regeneration outfit. So you can also swap out the waistcoat so that he doesn't have the bow tie on. But I have to say, of this head sculpt, I actually think this probably is the best Peter Capaldi likeness we got. I think they've nailed the hair on this figure, which they didn't do in subsequent releases. The only thing I'm not wild about is the arched eyebrow, but otherwise I think this is a really good likeness, and essentially you're getting 2 Doctors in one. Now things start to get really interesting. In at number 2 we have the Cyber Controller. Now this is a deluxe figure because obviously you get the figure, but he also came with his throne and actually 2 extra Cybermen as well. I love everything about this release. I think the figure itself is phenomenal, but the throne really sets it off. I love the fact that the tubes plug into his chest there, and I just think it looks like such a fantastic centerpiece, and it just looks really, really impressive. And I think they've just done an amazing job of bringing this off the screen into our hands. I love the attention to detail and all the wires and piping that's going on. The paint apps are really nicely done, and there's just lots of little details, nuts and bolts, and the Cyber logo is just fantastic. And as I said, I love the fact that the pipes actually plug into the figure there and accurately recreate that scene from the TV show. And that's not all, because the figure itself stands up perfectly well on his own. I think that the paint apps here are absolutely wonderful. It is, of course, the standard Cyberman mold, except he does have those chest pieces, and of course he has a different head sculpt, which is absolutely crucial. But yeah, I think the paint app's really nice. He has a lot more shading going on in his chest area, and, you know, he just looks like he stepped off the screen, which is what it's all about. And one of the key things for me is the brain and the eyes. As you can see on the head sculpt there, it is different from what we see in the other Cybermen, and I just love that you can actually see that brain and the level of detail that we've got going on there, and that they've actually gone to the effort of creating the blue but also the white dots around the eyes is fantastic. And when you put him in front of that throne, there's no denying that this is a really, really impressive centerpiece. He's creepy and authentic, and having that throne just really creates a diorama in itself, and that's just wonderful. And my all-time number one is the Empress of the Rachnos. Of course, this was a deluxe figure, and in my opinion is the king or queen of the deluxe figures. And again, much like the Slovene, this isn't a character I particularly care for, it's not an episode I particularly enjoy, but I do think the toy is magnificent. First of all, let's just talk about the sheer size of this thing. It is gigantic. It has to be the single largest piece in the entire Doctor Who toy collection. The paint apps are absolutely meticulously applied. They look so good, having that yellow, the brown, the black. They're so well put together, and there's extra little markings on there and lots of attention to detail. And this thing looks genuinely scary. It looks like having a giant tarantula in your house. Like, it is huge and quite creepy look. Now, you might think because it's so big and because it is such a deluxe figure that it would maybe lack in terms of articulation, but it doesn't, because it really packs the articulation. The head swivels from side to side, the shoulders move up and down, there is elbow articulation which moves side to side, there is rotation at the wrist as well, so creating a large range of motion just in the upper body. There's a swivel at the waist, but then each of the spider legs, each digit of the spider legs is articulated, so they move from side to side, they move up and down, they kick out, they fold in, so there's an endless amount of different positions you can put this figure in, and wow, it's really impressive. And it's funny because you actually get to see more and get to know the monster a lot more intimately than you ever do in the TV show, because I don't think we get to see some of these angles in the TV show, and it's brilliant just having it come to life in figure form, and it feels a lot more impressive than it was in the show, so character options get a lot of kudos for that. And thanks to the articulation, you can actually get some serious height on this figure. If you post legs just right, it can be low to the ground or it can be really high off the ground. And when you put them next to another figure in the line, like the 10th Doctor here, you can see just how ginormous this thing is. But also how colourful and just visually interesting this toy is. And you can see that you can create a lot of different dynamic, different poses that can be really interesting for any display piece. Somehow, this toy managed to be both toyetic and really child-friendly, but is also super collector-friendly as well, because it just makes such a fantastic display piece. And that ultimately has to be the hallmark of a really, truly fantastic figure. If it can please both children and adult collectors, then this is a real winner. And I do feel that this is probably the jewel in the crown of the character options toy line. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like. And remember to subscribe, as I will be posting more videos soon.